Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Perspective with me, Julie Ali. And on today's show, we are crossing over to the Western Cape. We're going to be engaging with Brother Mogamat Alexander, and he's written a fascinating book, and that's what we're going to explore on the show today. The book is all about the Cape Malay culture, the language culture being explored. So I'm pretty excited to chat with Mogamat Alexander regarding this book, how well it's been received, and I should imagine this is a legacy for generations to come, inshallah. Mogamat Alexander, assalamu alaikum to you. Welcome to the program. Lovely to have you on the show. And really, I'm so excited to talk to you about this book. Welcome.
Wa alaikum salam. And from my side also, shukran for the opportunity to share this variant of Afrikaans with so many people, because so many people do not know about this variant of Afrikaans spoken by the Cape Malays.
Alhamdulillah, we as Muslims, I should imagine, throughout South Africa and all around the world are very familiar, not necessarily in depth with the work or rather the Cape Malay vernacular, but I think by way of this book, you truly are going to give us a lot of insights into the book. And what I'm also concerned about, in my introduction, I did indicate that this is a legacy that you're leaving behind for future generations. But is the younger generation, and do you believe the future generations will truly be interested in upholding this legacy? I worry about that. Your thoughts?
It's unfortunate. You see, people, the younger generation actually switched over to English now. And Cape Muslims have always been a predominantly Afrikaans-speaking community since the creation of the Afrikaans language. And earlier Malays also contributed greatly to the creation of this Afrikaans language. But because our history was never taught in its totality, many Cape Malays do not know the history. They do not know the contributions early Malays made to the Afrikaans language. And, and how many people know that the very first Afrikaans was written by Cape Muslims?
Wow.
And this writing system is known as Arabic Afrikaans. This writing system was used long before the Afrikaners decided that they had a need for a reading and writing language. Cape Muslims already had a reading and writing language. This was long before 1875. You see, in 1875, a group of young Afrikaners got together to decide that they need a reading and writing language for their people. This was in 1875, and this group was known as the Genootskap van Regte Afrikaners, and they got together in Paul, and one of the members' houses in Paul to decide this. And then eventually, the following year, 1876, they published the first Afrikaans newspaper. And then in 1917, they published the first Afrikaans grammar and spelling rules. And then in 1925, Afrikaans, their version of Afrikaans was then accepted as the official language in South Africa. So in 1875, when they got together, decades before, and now they mention whenever you read the history of Afrikaans, they mention that the first Afrikaans language movement started in 1875. That is when those Afrikaners got together. But the reality is, long before 1875, there was already another Afrikaans language movement, and that language movement was by the early Malays. Long when they decided in 1875 that they need a reading and writing language for their people, Cape Muslims already had a reading and writing language. That is decades before they decided. The only thing is that they used the Arabic script to write in Afrikaans. You see, those people couldn't read the Roman script, but there was this need for a reading and writing language. So the Khalifas at the time, they came up with the idea, since people could read the Arabic script because it was required for them to read the Quran. So the people those early Khalifas came up with the idea of using the Arabic script to write in Afrikaans, and this is decades. So in reality, the very first Afrikaans language movement started decades before Afrikaans was standardized. And and then something else, if I may add to this, is that the Afrikaans spoken by the Malays today was actually first Afrikaans, because those Afrikaners, they used this first Afrikaans to create this new standardized version of Afrikaans. So what happened when they standardized it and this new version of Afrikaans became the official language in South Africa, the Malays stuck to the first Afrikaans, the original Afrikaans in pronunciation and all the foreign languages. And this is evident when we listen to the Afrikaans spoken by Cape Malays today and the way it was written in those earlier Arabic Afrikaans texts. And they will see that we stuck to our variant, the first Afrikaans. So the Afrikaans spoken but of course, South African history was never taught in its totality. And because of this, people didn't know the history. And people saw Afrikaans as a language belonging to the Afrikaner. And you cannot blame people, as I say, because our history was never taught. And people are unaware, and they just saw this Afrikaans as a language of the oppressor. And very few people know the contributions earlier Malays made to the Afrikaans language. And it's unfortunate. And so eventually what happened was during the 1980s, the early Malays, younger Malay generations switched to the English language. And today they cannot speak our heritage language. So Afrikaans, because early Malays contributed so greatly to the Afrikaans language, but not only Afrikaans, I'm speaking specifically Cape Malay Afrikaans. You know, here in the Cape, there are many, in the second book, I list about 27 different variants of Afrikaans, spoken by different people. And here in the Cape, there are two variants of Afrikaans spoken. The one variant is what is called Kaaps. I don't know if you know aware about that. And the second variant spoken here in the Cape is Cape Malay Afrikaans. And you see that both variants actually, we share pronunciation, but due to the many foreign loanwords in the Cape Malay Afrikaans is not understood by non-Cape Malays.
Obviously not. It's absolutely fascinating.
Yeah,
I might add.
A lot of foreign loanwords in the Cape Malay variant of Afrikaans that non-Cape Malays do not understand or use.
Okay, there's just so much more we need to unpack as we go forward with this interview. Let's first understand, who is Mogamat Alexander? Do you come from an educational background? What is it that inspired and motivated you to, do all this amazing amount of research? I have no doubt in my mind it's taken you years and years to put all of this together through painstaking research to get a book like this out into the community and the wider society. So what has motivated you, and what's your background?
Actually, what motivated me is something actually, I can say, insignificant. A colleague and I had a difference of opinion on some of the older Malay words used, and that is the words that are not used anymore. And you see, in the era we live now, whenever we want a quick answer, we Google. And that's exactly what we did. So we Googled the meaning to say that I'm right in my interpretation. He was sure that he's right in his. And so when we Googled, we found that Google was actually more ignorant than we were. And I was quite surprised to find that nobody took it upon themselves to capture these words and the meanings. And this actually led me to my first book, Dictionary of Loanwords in the Cape Muslim Vernacular. And I started gathering words. Of course, you can only imagine it took me quite a while to gather words. And then, of course, the meanings. And then, of course, the etymologies of the words, the origins of all these words that is part of our vocabulary. And eventually, after a few years, I managed to publish the first book with her. And this book, I never thought in my wildest dreams that this book was going to provoke so much interest in non-Muslims as well. I sold so many books to Afrikaners, and they were fascinated with this variant of Afrikaans. In fact, I sold more books to non-Muslims than to Muslims, to non-Malays than to Muslims. More Afrikaners across the, even abroad, I saw many people were just fascinated with the first book. And of course, the second book I posted, the Cape Muslim Vernacular, that is actually, the first book was a 140-page book. The second book is a 240-page book. And the second book is actually more history about the origins of this variant of Afrikaans.
Okay, can I ask you just to, Mogamat, can I ask you just to hang 10 there? We need to go for our first ad break, inshallah. When we get back, we'll continue this amazing, interesting discussion regarding the Cape Malay language culture explored with Mogamat Alexander. Please stay with us. Welcome back. Our guest today is Mogamat Alexander. He talks about his 180-page book, The Dictionary of Loanwords in the Cape Muslim Vernacular. He's also done another book, his second book, which comprises 240 pages, and that is simply entitled The Cape Muslim Vernacular. He's back with us, and we're going to talk about the history. We're going to talk about, obviously, the painstaking research that he did, the time it took to put this book together. Mogamat, welcome back.
Alhamdulillah, ready to give more information.
Okay, apart from having done a Google search to check out Cape Malay vernacular, Cape Malay words, what else was it that inspired you to decide to bring this story not only to Muslims all around the world regarding this piece of history? I'm kind of wondering what else spurred you on to do this book.
You see, across the world, so many languages became extinct because nobody took it upon themselves to capture the information. And this variant of Afrikaans face possible extinction. And the reason for that is since our younger generation switched to the English language, there's a possibility that this vernacular might die out 1 or 2 generations from now. And I just thought, let me capture this information for people doing research and also for future generations. Who knows, maybe some brave soul in the future might even try to revive this original language. As I mentioned, this is part of our heritage because our forebears contributed greatly to the creation of Afrikaans. And we see they have no historical link to the English language. English came here afterwards, but our forebears, contributed. Across, and of course, this is a worldwide phenomenon because English has become the super language, the lingua franca of the world, and everyone's using language. And I don't have a problem with people becoming fluent in English because English will open the doors for you now internationally because it's a lingua franca. But what happened was, across the world, you find people, like for instance, people speaking, whether they speak Arabic, Farsi, Urdu, Mandarin, Japanese, French, Spanish, and all of them, these countries encourage the people to learn English, but they do not give up their language. They still speak their mother tongue languages. Here in the Cape, what happened was our younger generation didn't take it as English as a second language, but they completely exchanged our heritage language for the English language. The result of this is that the younger generation cannot speak our heritage language. And that is actually prompted me to capture the information. Like I said, there is a big possibility that it might become extinct 1 or 2 generations from now.
So, Mogamat,
and I'm sure maybe it will actually be more valuable 1 or 2 generations long after I'm gone. I'm sure it will be, because maybe they can think long after I'm gone that someone captured this information, because it's not only words, it's an array of different things that contributes to this variant of Afrikaans. I can elaborate on that if you later on.
Let's understand your background. Who is Mogamat Alexander?
Mogamat Alexander is just an ordinary person concerned about the systematic erosion of the Cape Malay culture, the vernacular, everything goes with it. The culture is also busy dying out. So many beautiful Cape Malay traditions and culture are slowly dying out and replaced with Western alternatives. And that is a huge concern to me. Afrikaans, even the language, the vernacular spoken, inherited vernacular is part of this culture, this systematic erosion of our culture. And the sad thing is, it is happening unnoticed. Nobody's noticing it. More and more you see people exchanging or switching to Western alternatives as opposed to the cultural alternative is dying out. I'm talking about beautiful Cape Malay culture dying out and people switch to. Because we live in a world where people have access to Western alternatives via their phones and to internet, whatever, and some of these Western alternatives appeals to them. And I have to emphasize here, some. And it appeals to them. And now it looks much nicer, and then so there's a systematic switch to the English version. I'll just give you, even as far as language is concerned, how many times I see in the past people, whenever we spoke, we have our own thing like Tamaf, Kanala, Tramakasi, and all these things. And all these words are now replaced with English words. In other words, people now use the Western words by saying thank you and saying excuse me and saying ismi tamafi, no, excuse me, is Kanala, like no please, and Tramakasi. It's all falling away. People are exchanging our cultural, all these unique words with Western alternatives. And Cape Muslims have always been a predominantly Afrikaans. Everything was in Afrikaans. The khutbas, the slumse school, madrasas, as we call it in Cape, slumse school. You name it, even the Dutch, the lectures, everything was in Afrikaans at the time. And so Cape Muslim was always Afrikaans, but it was that interesting Cape Malay Afrikaans. It wasn't an ordinary Boer Afrikaans or Standard Afrikaans. It was Cape Malay Afrikaans. And if you want to, I can give you an idea what makes this variant of Afrikaans so different from other variants of Afrikaans, if I may.
Of course. Please carry on.
For people outside the Cape, just to give an idea, why is it that this variant of Afrikaans is so different from other variants of Afrikaans? Again, in the beginning, I said in the book, I listed about 27 different variants of Afrikaans. And Cape Muslim Afrikaans is a variant, is so unique, it's completely different from all the other variants of Afrikaans. So what makes it so different? For starters, it's all the Malay loanwords. Like words, I'm not sure if you're familiar with some of the words, like Malay loanwords like Tamaf, Kanala, Tramakasi, Huaza, Buka, Labarang, Maningal, Kubas, Bacha, Pujis, etc. Are you familiar with any of these words?
Yes, I am. Yes, I am.
Are you from Cape?
No, I'm not.
Look, many people
but I am familiar with the words.
And of course, there are Arabic loanwords like what we use part of our vernacular, like Hilaal, Fitna, Hasad, Munafik, Kibr, Sukran, Afwan, Janazah, Nikah. But then there are also, and of course, part of this variant of Afrikaans, there are many Islamic expressions like Inshallah, MashaAllah, Alhamdulillah, Astaghfirullah, Inna Lillahi. But there are also many idiomatic expressions used and understood exclusively by Cape Muslims. Like for instance, we in Cape we will say, wanneer jy kop op die grond sit, wanneer jy voete nat maak, ek is uit, sy is uit, sy moet nog 'n skuld inbetaal, hy's al lank al op dunya. And all these are all figuratively speaking, and only the Cape Muslims know the true meaning of, if we say, I'm uit, ek moet nog gaan klaarmaak, sy moet nog 'n skuld inbetaal, ek is op die berg, and all this. Only the Cape Muslims use and understood these idiomatic expression. And also part of this variant of Afrikaans, there are many family names. I'm sure you know that Ummi, Bia, Ami, Amati, Khalati, Abi, Abia. But Then there are also many self-created words, words that are used, Afrikaans words used by Cape Muslims, not found in the standard Afrikaans dictionary. Like we praat van Chaya, Geate, Gujazis, Kopeles, Slamse School, Keesopstik, Tabatsi, Omen, en so kan ons in Karim met die Zale, praat van 7 aan, 40 aan, 100 aan, Labarang, Gazi, jaargetal. As you can see, it's all Afrikaans words, but it's not found in the Afrikaans dictionaries.
Okay, so Mogamat, let me ask you this question then. I'm kind of wondering, more and more, alhamdulillah for that, our young people are, with the new dispensation, all sorts of opportunities have opened up for our community, for black people in general, and more of our children are being educated, they're moving abroad, they're in all different professions. And because of that, because of these amazing opportunities, the shackles of apartheid is now off our backs and we can compete in the global world. That perhaps these words, the Cape Malay vernacular, will not serve the current and future generations. Will you please ponder on that? We're going for our second ad break, and I'd like a response to that particular question. And also for these young people who have immigrated and semigrated out of the Cape, and people don't understand wherever they go and settle down. People don't understand this particular vernacular. When they do come back to the Cape, they refuse or they just in a new mind frame and they stop using the Cape Malay vernacular, and that's the reason why it's also dying out. So think about that, and right after the ad break, you can respond to me. Welcome back. We're talking to Mogamat Alexander, a very fascinating discussion. We're looking at the Cape Malay vernacular, and of course the important question I have put to him is the rapid, we're living in a global village, aren't we? And the fact that our children are all seeking amazing and more lucrative opportunities abroad or semigrating from the Western Cape. Could that possibly be part of the reason why the vernacular is dying out? Or is it just a situation of it not being cool as far as the younger generation is concerned? I'm also kind of wondering if our younger generation and future generations are not going to think that this is slave language, if I can put it that way. And we do know that languages evolve. We know, for example, when you go back to Shakespearean English way back in the day, it's no longer being used. I think if you use Shakespearean English, people won't understand what you're talking about. And perhaps the very same can be said about the Cape Malay vernacular. It would be sad if it dies out because it's steeped in the history of our people in the Western Cape or in the Cape as a whole. And for me, what also stands out is a lot of it is also intermingled. So you get this Arabic Afrikaans mixture of the Cape Malay vernacular. Your thoughts, Mogamat?
Yeah, of course, this is a common thing everyone's asking, and I'm not denying that English is a lingua franca in the world at the moment. And in fact, like I mentioned earlier, I encourage people, it's good to be able to master the English language, to fit into with the rest of the world. But I think it would have been nice if the people, instead of exchanging it, having it as a second language, like I said, I mentioned across the world, so many countries, encouraging people to master the English language. Like I said, whether it's Arabic, Urdu, French, whatever, they encourage people to learn the English language, but it's not at the expense of their own language. I'm not sentimental about them, and it's just that I found that it's a possibility that this vernacular, this variant of Afrikaans might become extinct very soon. And it's a good thing, and In fact, it's a worldwide phenomenon. It's not only, there are other places also where people, in our case, people exchange their mother tongue languages for the English language because English is, like I said, it's an international language now. Some people call it the English is linguistic imperialism, where everything is now in English. Everything you are kind of forced to learn the English language to be able to be part of the world, or cultural imperialism or whatever. But I don't have a problem when people switch over. I just thought I'll capture it. I'm sure someone is going to appreciate this in the future, this Vietnam Afrikaans. I also mentioned to you that so many languages became extinct and nobody bothered to capture it. And people in the later generation can't even trace anything, they don't even know what it looks like. And there are also many other languages that actually was on the brink of dying, and then some people revive the languages, all these languages that was actually killed by the colonists. Indigenous language, many indigenous languages was actually replaced with the language of the colonists. And today there are so many people trying to revive this language. Now people might say, you see, in the Cape, we are it's a new generation that came into being. People, it was such intermarriages, and this new generation, new people came in with this new variant that was really forced on them. There's some history on this as well, but I just thought it's such a unique, it's a very interesting vernacular. Personally, I feel it. I'm not going to force people to think the same, but like, for instance, if I say in our vernacular, words that we use, I'm fascinated. I can't explain. Like, tamav kanala tamakazi kirislam, poaza bukala barang sumbain bacha pujis maninga tuli. This is all is unique, and I think it's a fascinating vernacular. It's sad that, unfortunately, old people, the younger generation, do not feel, but they are not to blame. Because, like I said, our history was never taught in its totality. And people, we didn't know our history. That is why it was so English, so easy that eventually, after so many, even the Cape Malays fell victim to the English's.
Mogamat, let me come in here. Mogamat, let me come in here. Your first book was 180 pages long. The second one is 240 pages long. What's the difference between the two books? And then I also want to ask you the all-important questions. Apart from writing these books and hoping that future generations will preserve them, how else can we make people realize the importance of this vernacular not dying out? I can see how passionate you are about preserving this vernacular, because it's not only a language, it's about the history, it's about the struggles, it's about who we are as Cape Malays, as a people. And that's what you're trying to preserve, are you not? Part of all of this, Marv, is also our struggle, the struggle of the Muslims or the Cape Malay Muslims, that is all steeped in this vernacular. And then the other question I also need to ask you, is this a unique book? Has any other attempts been made by perhaps another Cape Malay Muslim to preserve this book and pass it on as a legacy to our future generations?
Of course, mine is not the first book, but there were other people. How is it? I can't get his name now. From the book of Ahmad Davids, the late Ahmad Davids. In fact, he was the first person to research this, and he actually introduced the Cape Muslims' history to us. We never knew our own history, and Ahmad Davids was the first person to research this. And one of his books was the Afrikaans of the Cape Malays. He was the very first person. And I just thought, okay, whatever he spoke about, I'll zoom into the Cape Malay vernacular, where he did brilliant research, and he's actually the first person to did a research on the Afrikaans of the Cape Muslims. In his first book was a very well-known book of the Afrikaans. There are many other books about the history of the Cape Malays, but his most well-known book was The Afrikaans of the Cape Muslims, and he wrote it many years ago, I think in the 80s, around about there. So I'm not the first person. I'm just zooming into what he started with.
How much of the history, the Cape Malay history, is covered in the book? I haven't, unfortunately, gotten to read your book as yet, or your book, so to speak, but how much of the history is contained in the book? Because it's not only a book about words. I'm sure that you talk about the origins of the word, how it came about, why it's used so widely, and how different are your two books?
The first book basically is I touch on the history, and then also I give but the main focus in the first book was to give the word, the meanings, and the origins of the words. And I was lucky enough to meet a young guy. He's actually from the University of Indonesia. He was a third year, he was doing his master's in linguistics, and he assisted me with the etymologies of most of the words used by Cape Muslims. And the other source, of course, is so much reading involved. You have to read and read to get so many information and whatever.
Have you ever explored the reason why this particular group of people are referred to as Cape Malays? Because history tells us that the people of the Western Cape, the majority of them, they are descendants of the Indonesians. And of course, over time, they intermarried with possibly the Dutch, Indians, and the local natives at the time that inhabited the place. So why is this population group referred to as Cape Malays? Once again, let me ask you to hold that thought. We're going for an ad break, and when we come back, you can respond to it, please. And welcome back to the final 12 minutes of the interview this morning. My guest is Mogamat Alexander. He's written two books. The first one is called Dictionary of Loanwords in the Cape Muslim Vernacular. His second book is called the Cape Muslim Vernacular. And of course, we're talking about, hopefully, preserving this beautiful vernacular, the Cape Malay vernacular. Welcome back, Brother Mogamat Alexander. And would you like to respond to the questions I put to you before the ad break?
Yeah, like I said, that's a common question. Everyone outside will always say, but why do you call yourself Malays? You are not ethnically Malays, because there's so much intermarriages that took place after. Because you must remember, people came from various parts of the world, like there's people from East and West Africa, people come from India, the Bay of Bengal, Ceylon, Madagascar, and Southeast Asia. These people came from various parts of the world, and they all came together and they intermarried. But the thing is that the people who played a leading role in establishing Islam in the Cape were those earlier Indonesians. And they are the founding fathers of Islam in the Cape. So Cape Muslims, we are actually culturally Malays, not ethnically Malays. Although why do I say culturally Malays is because we have adopted everything, the culture, the customs, the traditions, even the language, the way of life, the spiritual customs, the social custom and traditions, even the fact that we are Shafi, follow the Shafi madhab, and so many other things that we adopted from the early Malays. They were the leaders, so we are culturally Malays because we follow the Cape Malay culture. And we are not ethnically Malays, although there are many who can trace their lineage back to Indonesia. They are also amongst them. But overall, we are culturally Malays and not ethnically Malays because we follow the customs, traditions, lifestyle of those earlier Muslims who brought Islam to the Cape. And that's
let's look at the influence, Mogamat. Let's look at the influence of the Dutch, the early Dutch settlers in the Western Cape. they also intermarried a lot of the Malays or the Indonesians and the people, the original natives that resided in that part of the Western Cape, the Khoi, the San, etc., etc. And we can see it in, we can see it in generations. We can see it with our fathers, our grandfathers, great-grandfathers, and we can see the children. Some children are blue-eyed and blonde-haired, very fair-skinned. Other children have very distinct Asian features or very distinct Eastern Indonesian Malay type of features. So you have that amazing mix going on in the Western Cape. Let's look at that, the influence of that Dutch culture on the people of the Western Cape, or rather the Muslim community, the Cape Malay Muslim community, and what part of that culture have you actually brought into your books?
Not so much, but what I do have is that there wasn't much Malay or Dutch culture in but what also happened was, before I forgot to mention earlier also, before the Indonesians were brought to the Cape, many before Islam, Indonesia was actually a predominantly Buddhist and Hindu area. The result of that, there you find many Buddhist and Hindu words and Sanskrit words and Dutch words and Persian words and Arabic words. So when they came to the Cape, they came with all these foreign loanwords in their vernacular. And here in the Cape, people just assume this to be Malay words. Like, for instance, you get the word like pujis. Pujis is actually a Sanskrit word. There's so many foreign, I don't have all the words now in front of me. If you can give me a minute, I have a chapter dedicated to all the words that came from foreign loan words that came from, whether it's Sanskrit words, Hindu words, Tamil words, like puazas can be connected to it's actually a Tamil word. You get many Sanskrit words, Dutch words, Arabic words, Persian words, and all these words that was in their vernacular, then they came here and they became part. And also the pronunciation of the Arabic language, we also adopted from them, and the way they pronounced, like malaikat and sunnat and all these pronunciations. I explains all this in detail in the book, so many things that we inherited from them. But as far as the Dutch influence, not really. It's mostly, the difference between Cape Muslim, it appears that those early Malays, where they Afrikaans, the Dutch language was forced on the early Malays, right? And it was a language they never fully mastered. Instead, they spoke an improvised version of this language that was forced on them. And where their Dutch vocabulary was limited, they simply used words from their language. And for this reason, you get all the alternative words, like where in Afrikaans, the other variants of Afrikaans still adopted. The Cape Muslim have their own alternative words, like for thank you, we'll say terima kasih, for please, we'll say kanala, for excuse me, we'll say tamaf, and for send my regards, we'll say kirislam, and for puaza. You see, so where their Afrikaans, where their Dutch was limited, they simply used the words from their languages, and the Cape Malay vernacular was born. And of course, the way we pronounce Afrikaans, we got from the early Malays, so we have no connection to the Dutch. The way I explained, there's a chapter dedicated to why we pronounce our Afrikaans the way we do, why we pronounce J for yay, and so there's another chapter dedicated to that. So we even got our pronunciation from those earlier Malays. So
okay, Mogamat.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this question. We are going to be wrapping up. Two very important issues that I do need to touch on before we wrap up is you talk about pronunciation, and I'm going to bring up where and how do you explain the fact that outside of the Western Cape, the Muslim community would pronounce the word, your name, for example, Mogamat, as Muhammad. The name Ahmad, as is pronounced in the Western Cape, is pronounced differently in KZN and Gauteng. We would say Ahmad instead of Ahmad. It's very guttural. Where does that come about? And it's very, very widely used in the Western Cape. Is that some form of Arabic way of pronouncing those words? The H becomes, is really translated into a hard G. Your thoughts?
You see, this is an internationally, you see, to distinguish between, there's a chapter dedicated to that as well. You see the ha and a ho, right? In order to distinguish between the ha and the ho, outside the Cape of the international world, they use the word H for ha, the squint ha, right? But they actually distorted it in order not to confuse, to distinguish between the two, the ha and the ho. So they use the H to simply for the ha, the clean ha. But now they actually distorted the pronunciation even more, far away from the real Arabic pronunciation. Now it become Hassan, become Hassan, and so many words. In fact, it's become further for Muhammad is no Muhammad, is no Muhammad, and it's a distortion according to me, but I'm not sure, it's not for me to say what other people feel, but we stuck to the original pronunciation, the way we got it from, the way they pronounce Afrikaans, like the Arabic, the ha and the ho. But I think that's an international thing where there's a ha and a ho to distinguish, you use the H for the ha, and we stuck to the real pronunciation, ha. Muhammad.
Okay. I want to talk a little bit. You may or may not have come across this book by Tessa Dooms. She's written a book in collaboration with another author. It's called Being Coloured. And they specifically talk about the Cape Coloureds in this book. And I'm wondering if the Muslims from the Western Cape, the Cape Malays, are featured at all in the book. Did you have any input into that particular book? Are you aware of it?
No, you see, there's also another group here in the Cape. They're busy with a trilingual dictionary. It's called CAPS. And there was the Scouts, and there's like I said, and I'm doing the Cape Malay version of this. They're busy. I don't know when that will be released, but there are people from UWC who are busy with the CAPS dictionary as well. And apparently in a few years' time, it will be ready as well. But I just thought I'll do the Cape Malay version of this vernacular.
So there does seem to be a lot of literature regarding the language and the peoples of the Western Cape. And that, I must say, is very encouraging, because by so doing, this legacy will live on. And maybe the language will evolve over time, like you've indicated as well. And it's not only this particular language, but all languages do go through a process of evolution. And in 50 years' time or 100 years' time, the language might be pretty different. But by way of all of these different books that are being written, it is in fact preserving the heritage, the culture, the beauty of what was in the past, and there'll be lots of references going forward. That's where we come to the end of the show today. I'm going to hand over to you to summarize in 2 minutes what we've covered on the show regarding your two books. The first 180-page book, Dictionary of Loanwords in the Cape Muslim Vernacular, and also the Cape Muslim Vernacular. And I'm also wondering, as my final question to you, are you hoping madrasas and the masajids will keep these books in their libraries for people to reference and for people to understand the legacy that you hopefully are leaving behind regarding the rich culture of the people of the Cape Malays, to preserve that culture?
I certainly hope so. It will be more At the moment, it's mostly non-Muslim libraries and non-Muslim institutions, tertiary institutions, even abroad, that actually shows an interest, a huge. I cannot emphasize enough that I was shocked to go to see the interest by non-Muslim, even Afrikaners across South Africa, even outside of, they are fascinated with this book. But I also hope that, inshallah, even the Cape Muslims, they will start maybe appreciate it as well and have it in their madrasas and so on and so on, inshallah. But at the end of the day, be that as it may, the main thing for me was to capture this information should this variant of Afrikaans become extinct. So at least in the future, like I said, who knows, maybe some brave soul in the future, 100 years from now, will have this and maybe revive that, for interest's sake, this variant of this heritage language of the earlier, created by earlier Malays. But it is captured now for the future generations.
Inshallah, inshallah. Thank you indeed for all your hard work in putting these books together. Are they flying off the shelves? Apart from outside of the Muslim community, are our people beginning to show an interest?
Not yet the interest that I would have loved, but we're working on it now because I'm working with the Afrikaanse Taalraad, and they assist me a lot in the spreading this message, and I do appreciate them. And there's also, I don't know if you know about the program Barakat Fatima Ali's said Radio 786. She's basically doing the same work and trying in an attempt to preserve this variant of Afrikaans. And her programs, the name of her program is Barakat, and it's broadcast the first Sunday of every month. So she's also part of the Afrikaanse Taalraad, and with their help, they are also fascinated in this, and they're trying to help me preserve this. But like I said, if it should die out, at least the information was captured in the book.
Absolutely.
That's the main thing now.
Well, that's where we leave it. Thank you indeed for your efforts in trying to preserve the legacy of an amazingly rich culture, and that, of course, is the Cape Malay culture. Thank you indeed. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept your efforts, and all the very best. We hope and pray there's going to be more interest regarding your books. Go well, keep us in your du'as, and assalamu alaikum to you. And that's where we leave it, unfortunately. We have run out of time. Thank you so much for being with me on the show this morning, to our production team as well. This is me signing off on Perspective this morning. Please join me again next week at the same time for another episode of Perspective.